Tibor Baranski. Tibor Baranski, Hungarian, Baránszki Tibor. June 11, 1922 – January 20, 2019 was a Hungarian-American man credited with saving more than 3,000 Hungarian Jewish women, men and children from the Nazis during the Holocaust. When he was 22, he was forced by the advancing Soviets to leave his seminary studies and return to Budapest. He talked his way into the residence of Papal Nuncio Monsignor Angelo Rotta, the Vatican's representative in Budapest. He persuaded Rotta to give him papers that would allow a Jewish family, friends of his aunt, to escape Hungary. Rotta was so impressed by his boldness, he recruited Baranski, who helped save other Jews. Over 9 weeks, before the Soviets surrounded Budapest, Baranski orchestrated the rescue of over 3,000 Jews. Baranski was arrested by the Soviets on December 30, 1944, and sent on a 16-day, 160 miles 260 km forced march towards a Soviet prison. He was saved by a sympathetic guard and made his way back to Budapest. After he was hospitalized and released, he was arrested again in 1948 for clerical reaction, and in a show trial was sentenced to 9 years in prison. He was released after Stalin's death in 1953. He left Hungary during the 1956 revolution and settled with his wife in New York, where both became U.S. citizens and educators, and raised a family. On January 11, 1979, Baranski was recognized as one of the righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem. He was a member of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Council. Early life. Baranski was the son of Reszel Baranski and Maria Schellnader. His grandfather was born in Poland, and after serving in the Polish army in Budapest, decided to stay. His father married Maria Schellnader, and Tibor was raised in Budapest. His father's family had roots in Hungary dating back 700 years. He was educated in Hungarian gymnasia and became aware of rising antisemitism by 1938. He studied for the priesthood in Veszprém in 1940 and in Kassa-Kossuth in 1943. He learned of the Nazi government's extermination camps through church channels. As the Soviet army drew near Kossuth, Baranski was forced to leave for Budapest. World War II. Baranski's Aunt Margit Sterneder had become very close friends over several years with the Jewish family of Dr. Hedvig Seckers through her work at the Chinoin pharmaceutical factory in Újvest, a Budapest suburb. Background. Starting in 1938, Regent Miklós Horthy led the government to pass a series of anti-Jewish measures, emulating Germany's Nuremberg laws. The first Jewish law passed on May 29, 1938 defined as Jewish anyone who had converted or were born to Jewish parents after 1919. It restricted the number of Jews in many professions to 20%. About 5,000 Jews converted to Christianity after the passing of the first Jewish law. The second anti-Jewish law passed a year later on May 5, 1939, defined Jews for the first time by their race and not their faith. Individuals with 2, 3, or 4 Jewish-born grandparents were declared Jewish. Jews were forbidden to work in government, as editors for newspapers, and the number of Jews among theater and movie actors, physicians, lawyers, and engineers was capped at 6%. All private companies were forbidden to employ more than 12% Jews. Cumulatively, 250,000 Hungarian Jews were put out of work. Virtually all Jews lost their right to vote. At the next elections held in June, only 38 Jews could vote. As a result of the laws and cultural oppression, the Sterneder and Seckers families became even closer. The third Jewish law passed in 1941 prohibited sexual relationships between Jews and non-Jews, and classified another 58,320 people as Jewish who did not profess Judaism. The census question about Jewish grandparents was added late in 1941, after some census forms had already been printed, contributing to an inaccurate count. In addition, many Christians of Jewish ancestry did not answer the question truthfully. So while about 62,000 Christians admitted some Jewish ancestry, including 38,000 in Budapest, the actual number of Christians of Jewish origin by mid-1941 may have exceeded 85,000 and up to 100,000. A census beginning on January 31, 1941, counted a Hungarian population of 13,643,621. Based on the second anti-Jewish law, 2%, 846,000 were considered Jewish. In April 1941, Hungary annexed the Bačka, Murakaz, and Muravidic regions from occupied Yugoslavia. The total population of its annexed territories in 1941 was 1,025,508, including 15,000 Jews. As of May 1941, 87%, 861,000 of the entire Hungarian population of 14,669,129 were under Hungarian law considered Jewish. According to Jewish religious law, 94%, 725,000 were Jewish. Germans occupy Hungary. In early 1944, Hungarian Prime Minister Miklós Kelly was secretly attempting to negotiate a separate peace with the Allies. To prevent Hungary from leaving the Axis, on March 19, 1944 launched Operation Margaret, ordering German troops into the country. The far-right fascist Arrow Cross Party was legalized and assumed power on 15 October 1944. Led by Ferenc Szálasi, they formed the Government of National Unity. Jews sent to death camps. Mass deportations of Jews to German death camps in occupied Poland began. SS Obersturmbannführer Adolf Eichmann went to Hungary to oversee the large-scale deportations. Between 15 May and 9 July, Hungarian authorities deported 437,402 Jews. All but 15,000 of these Jews were sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and 90% of those were immediately killed. 1 in 3 of all Jews killed at Auschwitz were Hungarian citizens. By June, the Germans had organized a program to force Hungarian Jews into mini ghettos. On June 15, 1944, they were ordered to move into Yellow Star houses, approximately 2,000 single-building mini ghettos identified by a yellow Star of David over the entrance. Stirnetter became active in an underground movement that helped Jews find hiding places and obtain false emigration documents. The Seckers family fled into hiding, leaving their sick infant son Gavor Seckers with the Stirnetter family. Moderates regained power. In early July 1944, Regent Miklós Horthy replaced Dom Stage, an avid supporter of the National Socialists, with the anti-fascist General Geza Lakatos. Under the Lakatos regime, acting Interior Minister Vila Horváth ordered Hungarian gendarmes to prevent any Hungarian citizens from being deported. As the summer progressed, and the Allied and Soviet armies closed in on Central Europe, the ability of the Nazis to devote themselves to Hungary's Jewish solution waned. The Germans backed off from pressing Horthy's regime to continue further large-scale deportations. Horthy's actions bought the Jews of Budapest a few months of time. Fascists take over. In October 1944, Horthy attempted to secretly negotiate a ceasefire with the Soviets and ordered Hungarian troops to lay down their arms. In response, Nazi Germany launched Operation Panzerfaust. Troops led by Otto Skorzeny kidnapped Horthy's son and sent him to the Mauthausen concentration camp. The Germans forced Horthy to abdicate in favor of Selassie, after which Horthy was taken into protective custody in Germany. Selassie, leader of the Arrow Cross Party, was declared leader of the nation and prime minister of a government of national unity. Selassie organized the international ghetto, and over the next few months Arrow Cross members conducted frequent raids during which groups of Jews were taken to the banks of the Danube and executed. Baranski leaves seminary. In 1944, Baranski was studying at a Catholic seminary near Kos's present-day Slovakia to become a priest. He learned of Nazi extermination plans through church channels. He was forced to return to Budapest at age 22 on October 20, 1944, as the Russian army drew near. By then the city was under tight control of German forces. Baranski lived with his aunt, who requested his help, contacting Catholic Church officials to ask them to intervene on behalf of the Szekers family. Gains Catholic Church support. Baranski found a long line of people waiting for passes at Papal Nuncio Monsignor Angelo Rotta's embassy residence, the Vatican's representative in Budapest. It was one of 5 neutral countries' embassies issuing letters of protection, and the Swiss, Swedish, Spanish, Portuguese, and Vatican embassies were swamped by long lines of people requesting help. Dressed in his priest's cassock, he later said, "I was not discouraged. Nonchalantly, I pushed my way through the line and said that I was on official business." Germans and Hungarians believed that a family could not be divided. So, if there was one Catholic spouse, for example, only one baptismal certificate was necessary. However, to cover the entire family, individual protection passes were needed, stipulating that the family was under papal protection. Baranski wandered through the embassy until he found Rotta's office. No one questioned him wearing a priest's cassock. He persuaded Rotta to give him 9 letters of protection, one for each member of the Szekers family. Encouraged by his success, Baranski returned to Rotta a few days later to ask for another set of letters, this time for another Jewish family. Rotta was impressed that Baranski spoke excellent German and had bluffed his way to the front of the line and into his presence. He recruited Baranski to help protect Jews at risk of being sent to the death camps. Rotta provided Baranski with letters of protection, baptismal and immigration certificates, and over the next 70 days Baranski used them to save thousands of Jews in imminent danger of being sent to their death. 2 weeks later, Rotta appointed Baranski as the executive secretary of the Vatican's Jewish protection movement in Hungary, serving as a direct emissary of the papal nuncio. As head of the Jewish protection movement, he soon met other neutral legations at Gresham Palace near the Chain Bridge. The group included Raoul Wallenberg, a Swedish diplomat later credited with saving tens of thousands of Hungarian Jews from Nazi death camps. Baranski collaborated with Wallenberg and arranged private, unofficial meetings between the Swedish diplomat and papal nuncio Angelo Rotta. Baranski often led secretive meetings with diplomats including Wallenberg, Swiss consul Karl Lutz, Spanish consul Angel Sanz Briz, and Italian cattle trader Giorgio Perlasca to save Jewish lives in Budapest. During his work with the papal nuncio, he saw 2 handwritten letters from Pope Pius Roman XII encouraging the work to save the Jews. Baranski personally escorted individuals and families to hiding places, sometimes in secret rooms hidden within factories, and in the homes of other Catholics. Baranski described Wallenberg's motivation as divinely human love. "We knew in a second we shared the same opinion. The same recklessness, the same determination, all through," said Baranski. bluffs guards. Rotta asked Baranski to go the next day to a factory where nearly 50 Jews who had been baptized as Catholic were being held captive before deportation to Germany and almost certain death. Rotta offered to loan Baranski a small opal. Baranski said he didn't want to go the next day, he wanted to go immediately. And he brazenly insisted on borrowing Rotta's diplomatic automobile, a Rolls-Royce limousine flying the Vatican flag. I told His Excellency, the Nazis are primitive people. A little shoehorn car would not show any representation of power. The Nazis would be impressed by a Rolls-Royce. Baranski persuaded another young man to act as his driver and brought along a few others. He used the car to impress the Germans. Disguised as a priest, the 22-year-old adopted a haughty, authoritarian demeanor. At the factory, the Nazis refused to open the gates, and Baranski threatened to crash the car through it. They finally opened the gate and offered to show him where to go, but he rudely dismissed them, saying he knew where the Jews were being held. He discovered 2,000 Jews were being held captive inside, and called out the names of the baptized individuals he had been given. Then, while he distracted the guards, his assistants gave the remaining Jews information on how to contact the underground. He boldly intercepted groups of Jews who were being deported to the death camps and, using fake Vatican letters of protection, persuaded their guards to allow him to bring some prisoners back to Budapest. In October and November, Eichmann accelerated the program to annihilate the remaining Jews of Hungary before the Soviet army captured Budapest. About 50,000 Jews were forced to march from Budapest to Hegyeshalom on the Austrian-Hungarian border in November 1944, where they would be transferred to German custody. From 6,000 to 10,000 Jews died of hunger, cold, and disease en route. Rotta sent Baranski to Hegyeshalom with blank letters of protection. He freed hundreds of Jews, bringing them back to Budapest on a train. Acting as the Vatican representative, Baranski paid for the upkeep of thousands of Jews living in the Vatican's protected houses. With the help of his aunt, who worked for a pharmaceutical company, he distributed medicine, extra food, and supplies to the hidden Jews. I worked night and day and got very little sleep. Some days I didn't have a second to eat, he recalled. Besides the grace of God, I had some courage and some organizational abilities. If his deception was discovered, Baranski would have been killed. He credited his deep Catholic faith for the strength to ignore demands by Nazi officers that he stop working on behalf of Jews. When challenged with a gun to his head by a German officer about why he helped the Jews, he replied, "You are either silly or an idiot. It is because I am a Christian that I help the Jews." He received a call from Adolf Eichmann, who told him that only 3,000 of the 12,000 protection letters previously authorized by the Nazis would be honored. Not knowing who he was talking to, he told Eichmann, "I thought I was talking to a German officer, not a German scoundrel." Baranski helped those whose protection letters were no longer valid to hide in old houses and caves used as wine cellars. Using these methods, he said, "We were able to protect between 8,000 and 12,000 Jews," he said. He successfully won the release of dozens and hundreds of captive Jews again and again. He gave the Nazis and Arrow Cross officials meaningless but official-looking and life-saving documents, and used every other ploy he could imagine. He harbored about 3,000 Jews in the Vatican's protected sector of apartment complexes. Varying sources state he saved up from 7,000 to as many as 12,000 Jews. Baranski was arrested by the Soviets on December 30. Arrest and imprisonment. The Soviets began the siege of Budapest during the last week of December. They arrested Baranski on 30 December 1944 as they believed he supported the Nazis. He was sent on a forced march to a prison in Russia. He ate only 4 times in 16 days during the 160 miles 260 km march. He believed he would have died if a religious Soviet guard had not taken mercy on him, preventing another guard from shooting him, and then moving him to a line of prisoners who received medical help. Baranski was hospitalized, and after the war ended, eventually made his way back to Budapest. He finished his studies and became a vicar in Dregyalipalank in northern Hungary. When the Soviets took control of the government, Baranski liked them no more than the Nazis. He was arrested in 1948 for anti-communist clerical reaction and, in a show trial, was sentenced to 9 years in prison. After Joseph Stalin died and Imre Nagy became chairman on 4 July 1953, Baranski was granted amnesty after 57 months in prison. His only reward for the risks he took, he said, would come from God if he was deserving. I only did what God demanded of me. I'm only a useless servant. Later life. Freed from prison in 1953 after 5 years, Baranski became a freedom fighter during the Hungarian Revolution, helping to organize assistance. He went to Rome in 1956, seek Western support for the revolution. When the rebellion was crushed by the Soviets, Baranski did not want to return home. He liked communists as much as he liked Nazis. If you want to think like a cartoonist, Hitler and Stalin would be 2 cherries on the same tree, Baranski said. There was no difference. He was sent back to Hungary, but he was able to slip out again among many other refugees. He remained in Italy, where he married Catalin Corsi on 8 July 1957. They started a school and camp for refugees, living in a refugee camp near Rome, Italy, for close to a year. In 1958, they obtained visas to Canada. They lived in Toronto before moving in 1961 to Buffalo, New York, where they raised their family. Catalin had been attending school to become a medical doctor in Hungary, but was kicked out of the university during the communist-Stalinist period. Based on her education in biochemical pharmacology and biochemistry, urgently needed by the United States government to do research in biochemical pharmacology, i.e. biochemistry. After arriving in Buffalo, she became a professor of biochemistry and cancer researcher at the University of Buffalo. She died in 2011. Baranski adopted Catalin's son Peter Forgach, who became an eye surgeon from her prior marriage. Their son Tibor Baranski Jr. learned Chinese as a teenager and became an international lawyer in Beijing, and their daughter Katty is, as of 2019, Director of Communications at the Diocese of Buffalo. Legacy and honors. Wallenberg vanished while in the custody of Soviet forces. Before he died, Baranski was one of the last witnesses to the efforts to protect the Jews from the Nazis in Budapest. On January 11, 1979, he was named by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations. Baranski's and Margit Sternetter was also recognized as righteous among the nations on January 11, 1979, and on July 16, 1997, Yad Vashem recognized Monsignor Angelo Rotta as righteous among the nations. Gabor Sekers, the first person Baranski saved. His wife Agnes, who lost both her parents in the Holocaust, said of Baranski, he fought, and he was willing to sacrifice his life for what he thought was right. The 2 families remain close to the present day. In 1980, Baranski was appointed by President Jimmy Carter to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Council, where he helped guide the formation of the memorial. Hungarian ambassador to the United States Dan Karali presented Baranski with the Hungarian Honorary Cross of the Order of Merit at his home in Snyder, New York, on October 7, 2013. His son Tibor Baranski Jr., an international lawyer in China, initiated contact with Swedish diplomats in China. This led to 5 years of negotiation that resulted in contact with the Raoul Wallenberg family. In August 2017, Baránszki Sr. was invited by relatives of Wallenberg to be an honored guest for the annual Raoul Wallenberg Day events in Stockholm. The two men knew each other and met or spoke by telephone many times. The Israeli Postal Authority issued a stamp to honor Baranski in April 2017. Baranski's adopted son Peter Forgat said people used to ask Baranski how he could believe in God after all he witnessed. These things happened, and there has to be a God to bring justice, Baranski responded.